My name is Amanda, and for as long as I can remember, my sister Sarah was the golden child. She was 3 years younger than me, but somehow she always came first in our parents' eyes. Don't get me wrong, they didn't neglect me entirely. They just preferred her. When I made the debate team, they nodded and smiled. When Sarah joined the cheerleading squad, they threw a party. When I needed new clothes, we went to the outlet mall. When Sarah wanted a new wardrobe, it was a weekend shopping spree at the fancy stores downtown. Dad wasn't much different. Every Saturday, he'd take Sarah to the park, buy her ice cream, and spend hours pushing her on the swings. I'd tag along sometimes, walking a few steps behind them, watching their matching dark hair bounce as they laughed at inside jokes I wasn't part of. Sarah wasn't cruel about it, which almost made it worse. She never rubbed it in my face or tried to make me feel bad. She was just there, soaking up all the attention like a pretty little sponge, while I learned to thrive in the shadows. Our relationship was comfortable. Not close, exactly, but not hostile either. We existed in a careful balance, like two planets orbiting the same sun, never colliding but never quite connecting either. I threw myself into my studies, finding validation in academic achievement that I couldn't get at home. While Sarah was content to coast by on her charm and our parents' indulgence, I worked my ass off. Every A+, every academic award, every teacher's praise, became a brick in the wall I built around my heart. Amanda's so mature for her age, teachers would tell my parents at conferences. Such a dedicated student. My parents would smile politely, then rush home to help Sarah with her homework or console her over some minor social drama. It was just the way things were, and I convinced myself I was okay with it. Looking back now, I should have seen the signs. The way Sarah's smile would tighten when I achieved something she couldn't. The flash of resentment in her eyes when our parents actually paid attention to me. The subtle way she'd redirect conversations to herself whenever I was in the spotlight. But I was too busy trying to prove myself, too focused on being the perfect daughter even if I could never be the favorite one. I thought if I just worked hard enough, achieved enough, maybe one day they'd see me, really see me, for who I was. College was my escape. Finally, a place where hard work actually meant something, where being the responsible one was an asset rather than a consolation prize. I got into State University with a partial scholarship. All those straight A's finally paid off. I threw myself into campus life with the same intensity I'd applied to high school. While other freshmen were struggling to adjust, I was thriving. I joined the business club, made the dean's list, and landed an internship at Preston & Associates, one of the top financial firms in the city. "You're a natural," my supervisor told me during my internship evaluation. "We'd love to have you join us full-time after graduation." I practically floated home that day. For once, everything was falling into place according to my plans, not anyone else's expectations. Meanwhile, Sarah started college 3 years after me. Mom and Dad paid her full tuition, set her up in a fancy apartment near campus, and gave her a monthly allowance that was more than I made at my part-time job. "Your sister needs to focus on the college experience," Dad explained when I pointed out the disparity. "You're different, you actually enjoy studying." He wasn't wrong. While I was building my future, Sarah was building her social media following. Her Instagram was full of party photos and spring break adventures. Every time I visited home, she had a new story about some crazy night out. "You should come party with us sometime," she'd say, knowing full well I was too busy with my internship and studies to join her. After graduation, Preston & Associates made good on their offer. I started as a junior analyst and rented a small but decent apartment downtown. It wasn't much, but it was mine, earned with my own hard work. That's where I met James. He was the financial director, tall, clean-cut, with kind eyes and a quiet confidence that made my heart skip. We started running into each other in the break room, then at company happy hours, and finally, he asked me to dinner. When he proposed 6 months later, I was over the moon. He did it properly, down on one knee at our favorite restaurant, with a ring that must have cost him at least 3 months' salary. I couldn't wait to tell my family. We arranged a dinner at my parents' house, and Sarah, who'd recently graduated and moved back home, would be there too. She'd been working some entry-level marketing job, though from her social media, it seemed like she spent more time at happy hours than at her desk. The dinner started well enough. Mom made her famous pot roast, Dad opened his best wine, and James charmed them all with stories about his work and plans for the future. "Amanda really lucked out with you," Mom gushed, touching James's arm. "Such a responsible young man. They make such a perfect couple," Dad agreed, beaming at us. "When's the wedding?" For once, all the attention was on me, and it felt amazing. James squeezed my hand under the table as my parents peppered us with questions about wedding venues and dates. But across the table, Sarah sat picking at her food, her face growing darker with each passing minute. I caught her staring at my engagement ring, her lips pressed into a thin line. Every time James spoke, she would roll her eyes slightly or shift uncomfortably in her chair. James and I decided not to rush into the wedding. We started looking at venues on weekends, discussing color schemes over dinner, and dreaming about our future together. I'd never been happier. That all changed on a Tuesday evening. I remember it was Tuesday because I'd just finished my weekly video call with my wedding planner. I was still in my work clothes when James knocked on my door. Something was off. He usually texted before coming over, and his face was like a thundercloud. "We need to talk," he said, pushing past me into the apartment. His voice was cold, nothing like the warm, gentle tone I was used to. "What's wrong?" I asked, my stomach already knotting with anxiety. He pulled out his phone and started scrolling. "Care to explain these?" My heart stopped as he showed me photo after photo. There I was, or someone who looked like me, in compromising positions with different men. Screenshots of explicit text conversations filled his screen, all allegedly from me to various guys. "James, that's not. I never." My voice shook as I tried to make sense of what I was seeing. "These are fake. I've never cheated on you." "Fake?" He laughed bitterly. "Your own sister sent these to me." "So you're saying Sarah made all this up? Created fake photos and messages just to break us up? Why would she do that?" "I don't know why she'd do this, but James, please, look at my phone." I scrambled to grab it from the coffee table. "Check everything. There's nothing like this on there. I've never cheated on you." "Don't bother," he cut me off, stepping back when I tried to hand him my phone. "I trusted you, Amanda. I thought you were different. But you're just like all the others, a lying, cheating traitor." "James, please," I begged, tears streaming down my face. "You know me. You know I wouldn't do this." But his eyes were cold and distant. "We're done. Don't try to contact me again." The door slammed behind him with a finality that shattered my world. I tried calling him immediately, straight to voicemail. Text messages wouldn't go through. Email bounced back. He'd blocked me everywhere. I collapsed onto my couch, my whole body shaking with sobs. How could this be happening? How could he believe I would cheat on him? And Sarah, my own sister, had done this to me? The hours blurred together as I cried until I had no tears left. My phone kept lighting up with concerned messages from friends and coworkers. Apparently, James had already started spreading the word about my infidelity. After crying myself to sleep, I woke up the next morning with one purpose: confronting Sarah. My hand shook as I dialed her number, half expecting her to ignore the call. But she picked up on the second ring. "Well, if it isn't my cheating sister," she answered, her voice dripping with mock sweetness. "Why did you do it?" My voice cracked. "Why would you fake those photos and messages?" She laughed. Actually laughed. The sound made my blood run cold. "Oh, come on, Amanda. Did you really think I'd let you have your perfect little happily ever after? You, married to a successful, handsome guy like James? Please. What are you talking about? You don't deserve him." Her voice suddenly turned vicious. "You don't deserve any of it. The perfect job, the perfect fiancé. Who do you think you are? I felt like I'd been slapped. Sarah, we're sisters. Sisters? She sneered. Please. You're nothing but second best, Amanda. You always have been, and you always will be. Did you really think you'd get to marry someone like James before me? That's not how this works. In that moment, 25 years of sisterhood shattered. All those memories, the shared rooms, the whispered secrets, the forced smiles at family gatherings, they all took on a different meaning. Every eye roll, every backhanded compliment, every moment of tension suddenly made sense. You've been jealous of me this whole time, I whispered, the realization hitting me like a truck. Jealous? She laughed again. Don't flatter yourself. I'm better than you in every way. I just couldn't stand watching you play house with James when we all know you don't deserve him. I drove to my parents' house that afternoon, desperate for support. Surely they'd believe me. Surely they'd see what Sarah had done. I was wrong. Amanda, honey, Mom said, shaking her head. Why are you trying to blame your sister for your mistakes? But I didn't make any mistakes, I practically shouted. Sarah faked everything. She admitted it to me. Dad crossed his arms. Your sister would never do something like that. Stop trying to shift the blame. If you cheated on James, you need to own up to it. I left their house in a daze. Once again, Sarah was the golden child who could do no wrong, and I was the screw-up who couldn't be trusted. But life wasn't done kicking me while I was down. The next morning, I walked into work only to find my access card denied. Security escorted me to HR, where a sympathetic-looking woman handed me my termination papers. I'm so sorry, she whispered, glancing around to make sure no one could hear. James pushed for immediate termination. He said he couldn't work in the same building as, well. I didn't even finish reading the paperwork. I just signed it, packed up my desk, and left with my head held high, at least until I got to my car, where I broke down completely. 3 days later, my best friend Jenny called. Amanda, I don't know how to tell you this, but Sarah and James are dating. She's been posting pictures of them together all over Instagram. She's saying she's been helping him heal after your betrayal. I hung up without responding and threw my phone across the room. In the span of a week, I'd lost my fiance, my job, my family's trust, and now my sister was dating the man she'd helped me lose. Depression hit me like a ton of bricks. For a month, I barely left my apartment except to buy groceries. Thank God I'd been saving for the wedding, at least I could afford to wallow in my misery without worrying about rent. I spent my days in a fog, alternating between crying and staring blankly at Netflix shows I couldn't focus on. My phone stayed off most of the time. I couldn't bear to see more photos of Sarah and James together, couldn't stomach another well-meaning message from friends asking if I was okay. Then one night, around 3 a.m., I shot up in bed with sudden clarity. The fog lifted, and for the first time in weeks, I could think straight. I didn't want to die, I wanted revenge. Not the petty kind with drunk texts or social media drama. No, I wanted to expose Sarah for who she really was, to make everyone see the snake hiding behind that innocent smile. It was like someone had flipped a switch in my brain. The next morning, I showered for the first time in days, put on my best suit, and started job hunting. Within 2 weeks, I landed a position at Morrison Financial, a bigger firm than Preston and Associates, with better benefits and a corner office. I even started visiting my parents again. I'm doing better now, I'd tell them with a practiced smile. Sometimes things fall apart so better things can come together. They ate it up, relieved to see their older daughter moving on so maturely. I sat through family dinners, nodding politely when Sarah and James would show up hand in hand. He'd avoid looking at me directly, while Sarah would shoot me these little smirks when no one else was watching. James and I are thinking about getting engaged, she announced at one such dinner, watching me carefully for a reaction. I just smiled and asked to pass the potatoes. 2 years passed this way. I built my career, making a name for myself in the industry. I went on a few dates, though nothing serious. And I waited. Patience had always been my strong suit. Then came my opportunity. Sarah was having Sunday dinner at our parents' house, without James, who was on a business trip. She'd left her phone on the kitchen counter while helping Mom with dessert. I knew her passwords. She'd always been careless about security, leaving sticky notes with her login information scattered around her desk at our parents' house. It took less than a minute to get into her phone. And there it was, months of messages with someone named Mike. Hundreds of texts, dozens of photos that would make James's blood boil. "God, Jay is so boring," one message read. "All he talks about is work and investments. At least he's loaded. Can't wait to see you tomorrow, baby," another said. "Jay's credit card is buying us a nice hotel room." My hands shook as I forwarded everything to my email, the messages, the photos, the hotel receipts. I even found Mike's address in their chat history. They weren't even trying to be careful. Getting the video evidence was almost too easy. Mike's house was in a quiet suburban neighborhood, perfect for discreet surveillance. I spent a few evenings parked across the street in a rental car, my phone camera ready. Sarah wasn't exactly subtle about her afternoon visits. She'd pull up in the Mercedes James had bought her, practically skipping to Mike's front door. Their passionate embraces on the doorstep gave me all the footage I needed. "Baby, I missed you," she'd coo loud enough for my phone's microphone to pick up. "James is so boring compared to you." I collected 3 weeks' worth of videos. Sarah and Mike making out against his car. Sarah sneaking out of his house at odd hours. The two of them laughing over what looked like expensive champagne on his patio, probably paid for with James's credit card. Then came the engagement party. Sarah insisted on having it at our parents' house. "It's more intimate," she'd said, though really she just wanted to show off to the whole family. James had proposed with a ring twice the size of the one he'd given me. The house was packed with relatives, friends, and James's entire family. Sarah held court in the living room, showing off her ring to anyone who'd look. Mom and Dad beamed with pride, while James's parents kept commenting on what a perfect couple they made. "I'd like to make a toast," I announced, standing up during a lull in the conversation. All eyes turned to me. Sarah shot me that superior look I'd grown so used to. The same look she'd given me 2 years ago, when she'd stolen my fiancé. Poor thing, probably thought I was about to give some gracious speech about being happy for them. "I have something to share with everyone," I continued, connecting my phone to the TV. "A little engagement present, you might say." The first text messages appeared on the screen. Sarah's face went white. "What is this?" James stood up, squinting at the messages. "Oh, just some conversations between your fiancé and her boyfriend Mike," I said calmly. "There's quite a lot of them. They particularly enjoy discussing how boring you are, James. But hey, at least you're rich, right?" That's not," Sarah stammered. "And here's some video evidence, in case anyone has doubts." I played the clips one by one. Sarah and Mike kissing. Sarah leaving his house at midnight. Sarah laughing about James while sipping expensive wine. The room erupted into chaos. James was on his feet, roaring at Sarah. His parents were shouting about disgrace and scandal. Our relatives were whispering and pointing. "You crazy bastard," Sarah screamed at me. "How could you do this?" "Funny," I replied. "That's exactly what I wanted to ask you 2 years ago." Mom collapsed onto the couch, sobbing. Dad just stood there, mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. I didn't stick around for the aftermath. I gathered my things, walked to my car, and drove home in perfect silence. Inside my apartment, I poured myself a glass of wine and sat on my balcony, watching the city lights twinkle. For the first time in 2 years, I felt completely at peace. My phone rang at 7 a.m. the next morning. Mom's name flashed on the screen. "How could you humiliate your sister like that?" she screamed, before I could even say hello. "James called off the engagement. She's devastated. You need to fix this right now." "Fix what exactly?" I asked calmly. "The fact that she cheated?" The fact that she got caught? Or maybe you want me to fix the fact that she's finally facing consequences for her actions? She's your sister. Dad's voice came on the line. They had me on speaker. Family protects family. You will fix this, or we'll. I cut him off. Or you'll what? Take her side again? Go ahead. I'm used to it. I hung up and blocked their numbers. I needed coffee before dealing with any more family drama. But I hadn't even finished my first cup when someone started pounding on my apartment door. Open up, you damned bastard. Sarah's voice echoed through the hallway. I took my time walking to the door, unlocked it, and stepped back as she burst in. You ruined everything, she screamed, mascara running down her face. You ruined my life. Karma's a bitch, isn't it? I took another sip of coffee. I'm going to make you pay for this. She grabbed a framed photo from my wall and threw it at me. I dodged it easily. Like you made me pay 2 years ago? I asked quietly. When you fabricated evidence of me cheating? When you destroyed my relationship? When you took James for yourself? She froze, realization dawning on her face. You planned this. All of it. The whole time. 2 years, I confirmed. 2 years of watching and waiting. 2 years of playing the forgiving sister. 2 years of knowing that sooner or later, you'd show your true colors. You're insane, she whispered. No, Sarah, I'm patient. And unlike you, I only needed real evidence to get my revenge. She ran from my apartment like she'd seen a ghost. The weeks that followed were a parade of guilt-tripping messages from my parents. Sarah had lost her job due to emotional distress. She wasn't eating, wasn't sleeping. She'd moved back home and spent her days crying in her old bedroom. You've destroyed your sister, Mom texted. Are you happy now? I didn't respond. What was there to say? Dad tried a different approach. If you don't make this right, you're out of the will. Is that what you want? I finally replied to that one, do whatever you want with your money. I've already got what I wanted, the truth. They didn't like that answer much. But for the first time in my life, I didn't care what they thought about me. While my personal life had been a soap opera, my career was soaring. Morrison Financial promoted me to senior director, complete with a corner office and a substantial raise. Sarah, meanwhile, hit rock bottom. After losing her marketing job, she moved back in with our parents. That's when the drinking started, wine with breakfast, vodka for lunch, whatever she could get her hands on. It was during one of her drunken episodes that the truth finally came out. Mom told me about it later, how Sarah had been sprawled on the couch, halfway through a bottle of wine, when she started rambling. I showed him those pictures, she'd slurred. Made them all up, found some girl who looked like Amanda, got someone to help me fake the texts. She didn't deserve him anyway. I deserved him more. Mom and Dad sat there in stunned silence as their perfect younger daughter continued her drunken confession, spilling every detail about how she'd orchestrated my downfall. 2 years of lies came crashing down in one wine-soaked evening. Dad called me the next day. His voice was thick with emotion. Amanda, we need to talk. Can you come over? I found them both in the living room, looking like they'd aged 10 years overnight. Mom couldn't even look me in the eye. We were wrong, Dad said simply. About everything. We've been wrong for a very long time. Mom burst into tears. How could we not have seen it? How could we have been so blind? We failed you, Dad continued. Not just about James, but your whole life. We always favored Sarah, always made excuses for her. We let her get away with destroying your happiness, because we couldn't believe she was capable of such cruelty. It was the apology I'd waited my whole life to hear. But instead of feeling triumphant, I just felt tired. Dad cleared his throat. I'd been thinking, maybe we should try family therapy. The 3 of us. To work through everything. So we did. Every Tuesday evening, we sat in Dr. Marshall's office, unpacking decades of favoritism, resentment, and misplaced trust. It wasn't easy, there were tears, shouting matches, weeks of awkward silence. But slowly, gradually, things began to change. As for Sarah, my parents finally did what they should have done years ago, they cut her off. They gave her enough money for a security deposit and first month's rent on an apartment, telling her she could come back when she got help and showed genuine remorse for her actions. Last I heard, she's working as a receptionist somewhere downtown and living in a studio apartment. She sends mom and dad messages sometimes, but they're staying firm on their boundaries. James reached out eventually. My parents had told him everything, Sarah's confession, the years of manipulation, all of it. He asked to meet for coffee. I should have believed you, he said, looking older and tired. I should have at least listened to your side. I know it's probably too late, but maybe we could try again? I studied his face, the face I'd once thought I'd wake up to every morning for the rest of my life. I felt nothing. No, I said gently. I forgive you, James. But I don't love you anymore. I'm not the same person I was 2 years ago. These days, my life is quieter. I have dinner with mom and dad every Sunday. We're not perfect, there are still moments of tension, old habits that die hard. But we're trying, and that's more than we ever did before. I don't regret exposing Sarah. Some might call it revenge, but I call it justice. She made her choices, and now she's living with the consequences. As for me? I'm exactly where I want to be. My career is thriving, I have my own place, and for the first time in my life, I don't feel like I'm second best to anyone. Life has a funny way of teaching us who we really are. 2 years ago, if you'd told me I'd be where I am today, successful, independent, and completely estranged from my family, I would have laughed in disbelief. But here I am, and it's quite a story to tell. I'm Jillian Matthews, and back then, I was working as a manager at TradeSync Solutions, a mid-sized trading company. I was good at my job, but like many women in their late 20s, I was starting to feel that societal pressure to settle down. I had a decent career and a small circle of close friends. My family consisted of my parents, who I was close to at the time, and my older brother Marcus, who was 2 years my senior and had always been the golden child of the family. Marcus and I had grown up together in suburban Boston, sharing the typical sibling rivalry but maintaining what I thought was a solid relationship. He was always the more outgoing one, the life of the party, while I was more focused on my career and building a stable future. Our parents doted on him, and I had learned to accept that as just the way things were in our family. It was at Jenny's housewarming party, one of those gatherings where friends of friends mingle over cheap wine and supermarket cheese, where I met Tom. He was charming in that understated way that sneaks up on you, with dark brown hair that fell slightly over his eyes and a smile that made everyone feel like they were in on some private joke. We got talking about our shared love of true crime podcasts, and before I knew it, 3 hours had passed. We exchanged numbers that night, and within a week, we were texting daily. Our first date was at a small Italian restaurant downtown, where we talked until the waitstaff started giving us pointed looks about closing time. The second date turned into a third, then a fourth, and before I knew it, we were spending every weekend together. Tom was different from the other guys I dated. He seemed more mature, more focused on the future. 6 months into our relationship, we started talking about moving in together. He had a decent job in software sales, and we shared similar values about saving money and building a stable future. On our 1-year anniversary, Tom took me to the same Italian restaurant where we'd had our first date. He seemed nervous throughout dinner, fumbling with his water glass and checking his phone more often than usual. Just as our dessert arrived, he got down on one knee beside our table, pulling out a small velvet box. My heart was pounding so hard I could barely hear my own voice as I said yes. The ring was perfect, simple but elegant, just what I would have chosen for myself. As other diners applauded and congratulated us, I felt like I was floating on air. The weekend after our engagement, I brought Tom to meet my family. I was nervous, my parents could be pretty judgmental, and Marcus had a way of either making people feel instantly welcome or completely uncomfortable. There was usually no in-between with him. Mom opened the door before we even reached the porch. "There's my baby girl," she exclaimed, pulling me into a hug before turning to Tom. "And you must be the man who's stolen our Jillian's heart." Dad and Marcus were in the living room watching a football game. Marcus jumped up immediately, extending his hand to Tom. "So you're the guy my little sister won't shut up about," he grinned, giving Tom a firm handshake. "And you must be the infamous Marcus," Tom replied smoothly. "Gil's told me quite a bit about you too." The afternoon went better than I could have hoped. Mom insisted on showing Tom all my embarrassing childhood photos, despite my protests, while Dad grilled him about his job and future plans. To my surprise, Tom and Marcus hit it off immediately, especially when they discovered they supported the same football team. Finally, Marcus exclaimed during dinner, throwing his arm around Tom's shoulders. "I'd been dreaming of having a brother forever, but all I got was this troublemaker." He pointed at me with his fork. I stuck my tongue out at him. "Please, you wouldn't have survived without me covering for you all those times in high school." "True that, sis," he laughed, and the whole table joined in. The next few months were a whirlwind of wedding preparations. Mom took charge of the flower arrangements, Dad handled the venue negotiations, and Marcus appointed himself Tom's unofficial bachelor party planner and drinking buddy. They started meeting regularly for beers, and I was honestly thrilled to see my fiance and my brother becoming such close friends. The wedding itself was simple, but perfect. We held it in my parents' backyard, with fairy lights strung through the trees and mason jars filled with wildflowers on the tables. Our closest friends and family were there, and when Tom kissed me after saying "I do," I truly believed this was my happily ever after. We moved into Tom's rented apartment after the honeymoon, a cozy one-bedroom in a decent neighborhood. That's when we started our saving plan for our own place. We decided to make it into a friendly competition, each of us putting money into separate accounts to see who could save more for the down payment. At first, it was fun. We'd compare takeout menus to find the best deals, have movie nights at home instead of going out, and cook elaborate meals together to avoid expensive restaurants. But about 3 months in, Tom started getting restless. "We're turning into an old married couple already," he complained one evening. "We're too young to live like hermits." I tried to remind him of our goals, showing him how much we'd already saved. "Think about it, in a few years, we could have our own place. Wouldn't that be worth it?" He would nod and seem to understand, but then Marcus started inviting him out for guys' nights on Fridays. At first, I was worried, but Marcus assured me he'd keep an eye on Tom. I believed him. After all, who better to trust with my husband than my own brother? And Tom would always come home in a better mood after these outings, more affectionate and understanding about our saving goals. So I learned to accept it, even look forward to having some quiet time to myself on Friday nights. A year into our marriage, I was feeling pretty good about our progress. My savings account was growing steadily. I had managed to put away just over $30,000. I had no idea how much Tom had saved. We'd kept that part of our competition private, but I hoped he was doing as well as I was. It was a Thursday evening when Tom dropped his fishing trip bombshell. "Marcus and I are thinking of going fishing this weekend," he announced over dinner. His friend has a cabin up at Lake Webster. I looked up from my pasta, surprised. "This weekend? I thought we could finally have some time together. You've been working late all week." "Come on, Gil," he grinned, his eyes lighting up like a kid at Christmas. "I haven't been fishing in ages. It'll be fun. Just us guys, some beers, maybe catch something worth bragging about." As if on cue, there was a knock at our door. Marcus burst in. He had a key for emergencies, though I was starting to question the wisdom of that decision. "Little sister," he boomed, spreading his arms wide. Please let your wonderful husband come fishing with me this weekend." He dropped to his knees dramatically in front of my chair. "I promise I'll take good care of him. No wild parties, no crazy stunts, just 2 guys trying to outsmart some fish." I couldn't help but laugh. "Get up, you idiot. You're 40, not 4. Not until you say yes, he insisted, giving me his best puppy dog eyes, the same ones that had gotten him out of trouble countless times when we were kids. They left early Saturday morning, loading the car with fishing gear and a cooler full of supplies. I spent most of that morning cleaning the apartment, trying to keep busy, but by afternoon I was climbing the walls with boredom. That's when I had an idea. Marcus's girlfriend Sarah and I had become pretty good friends over the past year. She was smart, funny, and seemed to genuinely make my brother happy. Maybe she'd want to go shopping. I could justify a small splurge from my savings for some girl time. I pulled out my phone and dialed her number. She picked up on the third ring. "Hey Sarah, it's Jillian. Listen, the boys are off fishing, so I was wondering if you'd like to go shopping? Maybe grab some lunch?" There was a pause on the other end. "Fishing? Marcus isn't fishing. He's here with me at my place. We're getting ready to drive to my parents' house for the weekend. He's actually in the next room right now." My blood ran cold. In the background, I could hear my brother's voice. "Who's that, babe?" "Just my friend Lucy," Sarah replied, her voice slightly muffled. I sat there, phone pressed to my ear, as the implications of what I'd just learned began to sink in. My husband and my brother had lied to me. But why? Where was Tom really going? "Sarah," I whispered, "please don't tell Marcus about this call. I need to figure something out. Just, please?" "Of course," she promised. "Are you okay?" "I don't know, I'll call you later." I hung up before my voice could break. For several minutes, I just sat there on our bed, my mind racing. Tom's laptop was on his desk, humming quietly in sleep mode. We had always been open with each other about passwords, or at least, I thought we had been. His was simple, his mother's birth date. I'd teased him about being too predictable, about needing better security. Now, that predictability was working in my favor. My hands trembled as I opened the laptop and typed in the password. His social media accounts were still logged in, he'd always been careless about that too. And then I saw her name, Rebecca. The message thread was extensive, going back months. With each scroll, each message I read, I felt my world crumbling around me. "Can't wait to see you this weekend, baby. Your wife really bought the fishing story?" "Yeah, my brother-in-law's got my back. He's a legend." "Ha, she's so clueless. Must be nice having such a trusting wife." They had been meeting almost every other weekend. Hotels, her apartment, even weekend trips disguised as work conferences or guys' outings. The level of detail, the casual cruelty of their jokes about me, the intimate photographs they shared, it made me physically sick. But worse was yet to come. There was a separate message thread with Marcus. My brother, protector, best friend since childhood. "She totally bought it again," Tom had written just yesterday. "Your sister's as gullible as ever." "Huh," Marcus replied. "Gil's always been a bit slow. Remember when we were kids and I convinced her that ice cream grew on trees? She's never gotten any smarter. You're the best wingman ever, bro." Rebecca says hi, BTW. Says thanks for covering with Sarah too. Anytime, what are brothers for? Besides, this is way more fun than actually hanging out with my boring sister. Hit me up when you're back, those strip club girls from last month have been asking about us. The messages went on and on. Plans for their guys' nights, detailed accounts of their visits to strip clubs, discussions about various women they'd met. Not only had Marcus been covering for Tom's affair, but he'd been actively participating in a lifestyle that would destroy Sarah if she ever found out. I read about how they laughed at my careful saving plans, how they mocked my dreams of owning a home. They joked about how I'd probably end up paying for everything anyway, since I was such a sucker. My own brother had called me stupid, naive, boring. The same brother who used to chase away bullies when we were kids, who'd held my hand at Dad's surgery 2 years ago, who'd cried at my wedding. The room was spinning. I ran to the bathroom and threw up, my whole body shaking. When I could finally stand again, I went back to the laptop. With methodical precision, I forwarded every damning message to my email account. Every cruel joke, every planned deception, every piece of evidence of their betrayal. I spent Saturday night in a strange, calm state of rage, methodically researching apartments and making calls. By Sunday morning, I had secured a furnished one-bedroom across town, paid the deposit from my savings, and signed the lease electronically. Tom came home around 3 in the afternoon, his face flushed and happy. He was carrying a convenience store bag with a few frozen fish inside, a pathetic attempt at maintaining his lie. "Hey, babe," he called out cheerfully. "You should have seen the ones that got away." I was sitting at the kitchen table, my laptop open in front of me. Without a word, I turned it toward him. On the screen was his conversation with Rebecca, including their plans for this weekend's rendezvous. "You know what's funny?" I said, my voice eerily calm. "I actually expected you to at least try to apologize." He straightened up, his expression hardening. "Why should I? You want to know the truth? You've become boring, Jillian. All you care about is saving money and planning for the future. Where's the fun? Where's the excitement?" Even Marcus says what? I cut him off. That I'm stupid? Naive? That I'm such a sucker for believing my husband and brother would actually be honest with me? Look, he sighed, running his hand through his hair, maybe this is for the best. We're clearly wanting different things. You're right, I interrupted again, standing up. I wanted a marriage, you wanted a convenience. I grabbed my pre-packed suitcase from behind the couch. I'm filing for divorce. Don't worry about your precious savings, you can keep them. Though I doubt there's much left after all those strip clubs and hotel rooms. I spent the afternoon moving my essential belongings to the new apartment. It was small but clean, with basic furniture and a view of a small park. My savings, the money I'd been setting aside for our future, would now be my fresh start fund. That evening, I drove to my parents' house for their regular Sunday dinner. I knew Marcus and Sarah would be there, they always were after their weekends with her parents. Mom was setting the table when I arrived. Dad was in his usual armchair, and Marcus and Sarah were on the couch, looking like the perfect couple. "There's my girl," Mom smiled. "We missed you at lunch yesterday." "Yeah, about that." I looked directly at Marcus. "How your weekend covering for Tom's affair was, Marcus?" The room went dead silent. Marcus's face turned white. "What are you talking about?" Dad demanded. I pulled out my phone and started reading the messages aloud. The crude jokes, the strip club visits, the careful coordination of lies. With each word, Sarah's face grew more horrified. When I finished, she turned to Marcus, tears in her eyes. "Is this true?" He couldn't even look at her. "Sarah, please." The sound of her palm connecting with his cheek echoed through the room. "We're done," she choked out. "Everything, we're done." She grabbed her purse and ran out, the front door slamming behind her. After Sarah left, I expected my parents to be shocked, angry, disappointed in Marcus. Instead, my mother burst into tears, not for me, but for him. "Look what you've done," she cried, rushing to comfort Marcus, who sat with his head in his hands. "Your brother's relationship is ruined." I stared at her in disbelief. "Are you serious right now? Did you hear anything I just said? About how he helped Tom cheat on me? About the strip clubs? The lies?" "Oh, Jillian," Dad sighed, shaking his head. "Boys will be boys. You're making a mountain out of a molehill. Tom was just blowing off some steam, and Marcus was being a good friend." A good friend? I felt like I'd stepped into some bizarre parallel universe. "He helped my husband cheat on me. He lied to my face for months. And now you've destroyed his relationship with Sarah," Mom snapped. "Was that really necessary? Couldn't you have handled this privately?" Marcus lifted his head, his eyes red but dry. "Yeah, sis, real classy move. You just had to drag everyone into this, didn't you?" I looked between them, my mother stroking Marcus's hair like he was a wounded child, my father giving me that disappointed look he'd perfected over the years, and my brother, playing the victim as he had his entire life. In that moment, something inside me broke and reformed, harder and colder than before. You know what? You're right. I should have known better than to expect any of you to take my side. Marcus has always been the golden child, hasn't he? He can do no wrong. Well, congratulations, you can have each other. I walked out of my childhood home that night and didn't look back. The divorce proceedings were surprisingly quick. Tom tried to claim half of my savings, arguing they were marital assets. We agreed to save together, he said in mediation, trying to sound reasonable. It was our joint plan for our future. But even his parents, who'd stayed out of the whole mess, told him to drop it. Don't make yourself look worse than you already do, his mother had said sharply. He withdrew his claim the next day. From mutual friends, I heard that Marcus and Tom were still thick as thieves. Without Sarah to keep him in check, Marcus had fully embraced the single life again. They were regulars at every bar and club in town, living it up like college freshmen instead of grown men in their 30s. Their social media was full of party pictures, groups of girls, and drunken adventures, not that I looked often, but word got back to me. Funny how clarity comes when you strip everything away. Without the distractions of a failing marriage or family drama, I could finally focus on what I wanted. And what I wanted was to succeed. I volunteered for every challenging project that came through TradeSync Solutions. The ones other managers avoided because they were too complex, too risky, or too time-consuming, I took them all. I stayed late, came in early, and poured every ounce of my energy into making each project exceptional. My first major success came with the Anderson account, a client everyone had written off as impossible to please. I restructured their entire trading framework, created new reporting systems, and increased their profitability by 47% in the first quarter. The CEO himself called to praise my work. That success led to bigger projects. I developed a new risk assessment protocol that saved the company millions in potential losses. I streamlined our international trading processes, reducing transaction times by 60%. Each victory built upon the last, and people started to notice. Jillian, my boss called me in one day, how would you feel about joining the management team? We need someone with your vision. The promotion came with a corner office and a salary that made my eyes water. I celebrated by buying myself a sleek black Mercedes, not the most practical choice, perhaps, but I wanted something that would remind me every day of how far I'd come. 6 months later, I closed on my dream apartment, a 2-bedroom condo in the city's most desirable neighborhood. The mortgage payments were steep, but I could handle them. Every night, I would stand on my balcony overlooking the city lights, feeling proud of what I'd built on my own. I hadn't spoken to my family in all this time. No birthday calls, no holiday gatherings, no Sunday dinners. Sometimes I'd see their numbers on my phone, but I never answered. The wounds were still too raw, the betrayal too fresh. Then, on a random Tuesday evening, as I was reviewing quarterly projections in my new home office, my doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone, and few people had my new address. Through the security camera, I saw my parents standing there, looking older and more tired than I remembered. For a moment, I considered not answering. But something in their posture, the way Mom kept wringing her hands, how Dad's shoulders slumped, made me buzz them up. Jillian, Mom started as soon as I opened the door, you look wonderful. What do you want? My voice was cool, professional, the same tone I used in difficult client meetings. They exchanged glances before Dad spoke. It's about Marcus. We were wrong about him. About everything. They told me how Marcus had spiraled after Sarah left him. How his friendship with Tom had turned toxic, endless partying, drinking, hooking up with random women. How he'd started showing up to work hungover, then drunk. 2 formal warnings, one for being intoxicated at his desk, another for no showing an important client meeting. He's been fired, Mom said, her voice breaking. His references are terrible. no one will hire him. He's living in his old room now. He has no money, no prospects. What exactly do you expect me to do about this? I asked, leaning against my kitchen counter. The marble was cool against my palms, a small luxury I'd chosen for myself when renovating. Mom's eyes lit up with hope at my question. Well, sweetheart, we know you're in management now. At such a prestigious company. We were thinking, Dad continued, maybe you could find a position for him? Something suitable. With a good salary. It doesn't have to be anything too demanding. A laugh escaped my lips before I could stop it. Let me get this straight. You want me to risk my professional reputation, which I built from scratch, to give a cushy job to the brother who betrayed me? The same brother who helped destroy my marriage? Jillian, that was 2 years ago, Mom pleaded. People make mistakes. Mistakes? I straightened up, my voice deadly calm. A mistake is forgetting to buy milk. A mistake is being late for dinner. What Marcus did, that was a choice. Multiple choices, actually. He chose to cover for Tom's affairs. He chose to mock me behind my back. He chose his friendship with my cheating ex-husband over his own sister. He's family, Dad argued, his face reddening. Family forgives. Really? Where was this family loyalty when I needed it? When I showed you proof of what they'd done to me. You sided with him then, remember? You're being unreasonable, Mom snapped. If you don't help your brother, we'll disinherit you. Everything will go to Marcus. I looked around my apartment, at the art I'd chosen, the furniture I'd bought, the life I'd built without their help. Then I laughed again, genuinely this time. I don't need or want anything from you. I think it's time for you to leave. I walked to the door and held it open. I have an early meeting tomorrow. They tried to argue more, but I simply stood there, door open, waiting. Finally, they left, Mom in tears, Dad muttering about ungrateful daughters. As I closed the door behind them, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. Through the window, I watched them get into their aging Volvo, the same car they'd had since I was in college. I thought about Marcus in his childhood bedroom, probably nursing another hangover, waiting for someone else to solve his problems like they always had. Last I heard, he was doing odd jobs around the neighborhood, mowing lawns, painting fences, anything to scrape together drinking money. Tom had eventually grown tired of partying with a broke friend and moved on. Karma, as they say, is a patient visitor. I poured myself a glass of wine, an expensive Bordeaux I'd bought to celebrate my last successful project, and walked out onto my balcony. The city stretched out before me, lights twinkling like stars fallen to earth. Below, I could see my Mercedes in its reserved parking spot, a symbol of everything I'd achieved on my own. Some might call me cold for turning my back on family. But family isn't just about blood, it's about trust, respect, and loyalty. Those who truly love you don't betray you, mock you, or try to manipulate you. They stand by you, support you, and celebrate your successes.